What is up everyone and welcome to the channel. This is GenchoMoto and in today's video we're going to show you essential car tips which are going to eventually save you money and hassle on the roads. With all that being said, I think we did it. Tip number one is going to be something that is super easy to do it yourself and is going to save you a lot of hassle in the winter season. It's also very cheap to replace. This is wiper blades. So my opinion is that wiper blades should be changed every single year in the beginning of the autumn season. You might ask yourself why? Because wipers are made from rubber. This rubber deteriorates with time, especially from weather being changing from being hot to cold and from cold to hot, and obviously they have a lot of movement and friction on the glass, so that basically eventually gets them to wearing out. And if you don't change them on time, or if you rarely change them, some people, believe it or not, never ever bother to change them unless on the MOT they don't come up as an advisory. They basically start to smear on the windscreen. The functionality of them is not as good in winter times, especially when it's raining. You can barely see and the chance of you getting into some sort of an accident is a lot more higher than the chance if you're having like brand new ones, especially when they're cheap enough. 5 to 20 pounds, sometimes you can get for 20 pounds all three of them, so the rear one as well, even though the rear one I personally think is not as important, but then it's always good to change it as well, and you can change them literally in less than a minute. Tip number two is going to be related to your fuel and your fuel system of the car. So my suggestion to you is keep your tank half full or half empty, depending on which side of the glass you see live. Driving on low fuel constantly eventually will clog up your fuel pump, simply because on the bottom of the tank there's always some sort of rubbish which will go into your fuel lines. Also, the chances of your fuel pump sucking air or running dry is much higher than if you have your fuel tank covered in fuel, which is usually about half a tank. Another thing is, when you have a half a tank, you're never worried in emergency situation that you will run out of fuel. You can always pop in or pop by somewhere close without worrying that you're in a rush, you have to put fuel as extra. The simple way to reduce your chances of getting a fuel system failure is literally just driving always with half a tank full or above. When your gauge gets to the middle, this is your time when you need to refuel. Just have it as mindset. After a couple of weeks you're gonna do it automatically. And this is for tip number two. Also, another thing to add, it's not just the fuel pump that might fail, it's a lot more things like injectors getting clogged, fuel lines. It's ton and ton of stuff that can go wrong. So this is one simple way that will cost you absolutely nothing to reduce your chance of getting fuel system failures. Also, another super quick thing is, when you're having your car cleaned, always clean the little bay where your fuel cap is. As you can see, it's super dirty. Sometimes that rubbish gets inside the fuel tank. This is also a bad thing for the fuel system. Right, so tip number three, we're going to speak about suspension and tires, especially on old cars. When you turn your wheel and look at a tire, a lot of the times on them old cars, they're worn either on the outer side or the inner side of the wheel. This is because their tracking is not right, hence why the tire wears out a lot more quicker, and then obviously you have to replace them. When my advice to you is going to be, if your tires are worn out unevenly, if your tire is worn out unevenly, go and get yourself tracking before you put the new tires. Because if you put your new tires without tracking, they're gonna get worn out a lot more quicker, same as your previous one. You're gonna end up spending a lot more money on tires. Do the tracking first. It usually costs anything between 20 pounds to 70 pounds, depending on which side, which garage you're going. But if you don't do it and you end up putting second-hand brand new tires, whatever tires they are, different tires, they're gonna get worn the same way, a lot more quicker than if you've done your tracking. Once your tracking is done, the tire is gonna be worn out evenly everywhere. So that means it's gonna wear a lot more slower. So this is basically a very simple way to prevent you and your pocket from having to pay a lot more money. Second thing to have a look is, when you're buying second-hand tires, always look at the DOT. DOT is basically telling you when the tire has been manufactured. So if it's like super old, even though it has a good tread. The friction and stability that it has on the road is not the same as when it was like a few years back, because again, this is the same as the wiper blades. This is a rubber, it deteriorates. Although it might look good, it might be like super stuff, the chances of you sliding on the road in rainy days, it's a lot more higher than having a proper good new tire. Also, obviously, chances of having accidents, again, a lot more higher. So look at that, especially if you're buying second-hand tires. And also, once every month, just check your tire pressure on every single tire. Different tire pressure than the recommended one for the particular car can lead to more fuel consumption and also, again, quicker wear out of the tire. So yeah, just check your tire pressures on a regular basis. Tip number 4, we're going to open the bonnet and I'm going to let you know what is it. Oh, it's nice and cold in here. So tip number 4 is something super basic. It doesn't cost almost anything to do unless you have something to do, if you know what I mean. If you don't, I'll explain. For tip number 4, I'm going to recommend check your car's condition once in a month. So pick up a date from the month where you can have 10 minutes to spare to go around your car, make sure everything's correct, because a lot of the times the issues and the faults that your car will have will start from something very little, which is going to turn to something very major, which can lead to either engine failures, suspension failures, as extra, which is always costly to replace. So what I usually do is I do it on the first Saturday of the beginning of every month. I go to my car, walk around, make sure I don't have any new dents, scratches, which usually happens on parking lots as extra. And once I go around, I quickly start the car. I turn on the lights and the indicators. So I walk around super quick, make sure that every bulb is operating. All you have to do for the indicators is just press the hazard lights. If they're all working, that means you're working. You don't have to go left or right, first of all. Then I move back to my tail lights. Yep, everything's working. I get my missus to check the stop lights if they're working, so I go and press the stop light. If you don't have your missus at home, or if you don't have a missus at all, you can find something heavy like a brick and put it on your brake pedal, then go back and check it. Once that's done, then I put the high beams. I quickly nip to the front of the car, check the high beams, turn it back, that light's done. Check fuel gauges, heater, every single button of the car, so quickly go around, check that, check mirrors, basically check every single button of your car, make sure it's working. If some are not working, depending on what is it for, it's not a major issue, but with some is anyway. Then I turn off the car, stop all the lights and everything, walk around, have a look on the tires. You can get yourself a tire pressure gauge. They cost no more than £2, so go around, quickly check each one. A tire compressor is very cheap. The one that goes in your 12-volt socket, it's usually about £12 to £15. Again, inexpensive. You don't have to pay 50p every time you go to a petrol station. They're dear, so now they're about £1. So after 12 times, you've already have your money back for your compressor. I quickly go around, check all the tires, go underneath the car, check for any leaks, check for rust. Obviously, if you're checking every single month, then the rust you can skip, but quickly have a look. It only takes like 10 seconds. When my tires are okay, it's extra, and then I go to the engine bay and I start with oil. I usually start with lifting up my dipstick. On every single car, the dipstick location is on a different place, so this is not exactly a tutorial for where your dipstick is located. Then what I do is I wipe it with a napkin, towel, anything, and I place it back in. Count like 1 to 3, 1, 2, 3. Lift it up again and check your oil level. As you can see, on this car the oil level is a bit low, so it will need topping up. Then also what you want to check is for water inside the oil. So it's usually like little drops or milky residue, whatever you want to call it, on the dipstick. That means if you have that, that means you have a major issue and you definitely have to get your car to a garage. Usually it's not something that you expect to find every month, but occasionally it might happen depending on how you drive your car. Then I lift up the cap again, expect for milky residue in the oil cap, nothing, so that's all good. The next thing I want to move to is my coolant level. When you're checking coolant level, always make sure that your car's cold, because this can burn you really bad. You don't, most of the times you don't even have to open the cap, but I open it anyway. Just check for some milky residue in the container for the coolant, because not only coolant can get into your oil, it's also oil that can get into a coolant. This usually leads to head gasket. This usually means that it's some sort of a head gasket failure. Anyway, coolant's okay. Then I move to my power steering fluid. I just quickly want to check the level, make sure it's a nice color. So you don't want it to be like dirty black. You want it to be like sort of brownish, depending on what sort of fluid you're using. So the levels on that one are good. You're gonna find out that a lot of them have like marks, so where it's like full and empty, same as the coolant level, same as the steering level. So on most cars you have two reservoirs. One of them is for the brakes, one of them is for the steering. This one is with only one, so obviously it's easier for us to check. Then I go to a container for my windscreen wash, more than once in a month, especially in rainy seasons like we're talking about. And this one is empty, so that will need topping up. Have a spare one just in case inside of your boot. It's always good to have, and it's always something that you have to top up, so this is normal. Also for rainy seasons, I forgot to say in tip number 1 for the wipers is have products like Rain-X and all them other solutions for your windscreen, which are helping the friction of the wipers and which are preventing misting as well on your windscreen. This is something horrible. Them products are usually working great and they're inexpensive. They cost anything between £3 and £7. So that is it for that. So after I do like a full check on all my fluids, I quickly go around to check, make sure that every hose is okay, because here there is heat inside the engine bay. Obviously rubber hoses, they can crack and they can deteriorate it, so that can lead to more fuel consumption, a lot more engine failures and blah blah blah. So I go around, quickly look and check for any new oil leaks, because it's an old car. Every car will have like a little leak from somewhere here and there, but go around, inspect it for any leaks that you don't know. Everything seems fine. Close your bonnet. Literally, you're done with your check. You can go further in, especially if you have like a diagnostic tool, then you can use the diagnostic tool as well to check for any fault codes that a car might come up with. Sometimes because a low battery, you can store like different codes. It's not a massive issue, but it all depends on how much time you've got to spare. I personally reckon 10 minutes on one day of the month you can spare for your car to have a look about your general condition. Trust me, if you find something on time before the problem becomes bigger, it's going to cost you a lot less, and simple stuff like this will help you prevent it. For example, if you notice that your steering fluid is going low every single check that you do, go in the garage and check it, because you have a leak somewhere, which can lead to your steering rack going faulty, which is again expensive. But you get my point. Little things can become bigger. You're going to start topping up and topping up and topping up by the time you're not going to be able to top up anymore. And with all that being said, this was 4 tips for your car maintenance that will save you money and hassle. With all that being said, which we already said, if you like this video, you know how it goes. Hit the like button, comment below, subscribe, because that's how you help us grow. And share as well.
No. Are you alright? Did that really hit you?
Yeah.
Fuck's sake, sorry.